Today, the Red Bull hit-and-run saga continues as new evidence is presented on the investigation. Meanwhile, 2 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine have touched down in Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport, but whose arms will they be jabbed in? Details on these stories and many more coming right up. Welcome to the Thaiger channel, and you're watching Thailand News Today, where we bring you the latest top stories in Thailand and beyond. Now, in our first story, a former national police chief and a lawyer for the fugitive Red Bull heir are being investigated for changing the reported speed the billionaire was driving when his Ferrari ran over a police officer back in 2012. Reports say they allegedly told an investigation officer to change the speed from 177 kilometers per hour to just 76 kilometers per hour. Changing the speed is said to have led prosecutors to drop the charge of reckless driving causing death. The billionaire Warayut Yuwitaya, who goes by the nickname Boss, managed to evade justice and fled the country in 2017, ditching his private jet in Singapore. A Royal Thai Police Special Committee will investigate the ex-police chief and the lawyer to determine whether they did change the report on the actual speed that Boss was driving when he hit the police officer. The police internal affairs chief, who chairs the committee, said the investigation officer in the hit-and-run case presented an audio clip where the then police chief and Boss's attorney told him to change the speed from 177 kilometers per hour to 76. The committee's chairperson says the audio recording will be reviewed and officers will investigate to determine if anyone else was involved. The government has slammed opposition parties for trying to end the Prime Minister's term prematurely. Spokesperson from the Prime Minister's Secretariat Office, Tipanan Sirishana, accuses opposition MPs of trying to damage Prayut Chan-o-cha's reputation because they're concerned he might score a second term in office. According to a report, the confrontation is the result of a difference of opinions as to how long the Prime Minister has been in office. Opposition parties say the Prime Minister has been in his role since being confirmed as head of the National Council for Peace and Order following the 2014 military coup. Section 158 of the Constitution prevents anyone from being PM for more than 8 years, whether or not 4-year terms are served back to back. The opposition is therefore saying the Prime Minister has less than a year left and that his time as leader of the country will end next August. However, the spokesperson has argued against this, insisting that the Prime Minister's term in office only began after the declaration of the current charter in 2017. In other news, opposition parties are also filing a petition with the National Anti-Corruption Commission based on allegations leveled against the Prime Minister and 2 of his ministers. The Pheu Thai Party claims that the Prime Minister, Public Health Minister Chan Virakul, and Agriculture Minister Chalom-chai Srion mishandled the COVID-19 vaccine procurement, engaged in corrupt practices when procuring antigen test kits, and mismanaged the rubber stockpile quota, causing the price of rubber to collapse. Starting in October the 1st, overseas travelers who enter Thailand under the Phuket sandbox will now be required to stay in the province for 7 days instead of the previous 14. The Phuket Information Center shared a notice on Facebook saying that visitors arriving to Phuket through the Sandbox project will need to stay at a certified SHA Plus hotel for 7 days before traveling to other provinces in Thailand. The notice says travelers can now register for a 7-day Certificate of Entry or COE. At Monday's CCSA meeting that was chaired by the Prime Minister, the COVID task force approved the reduction of the mandatory quarantine from 14 days to 7 for fully vaccinated travelers. Those who are unvaccinated or cannot prove their vaccination status are still subject to a quarantine period between 10 to 14 days. To qualify for the 7-day quarantine period, travelers need to be fully vaccinated at least 14 days before departure. 2 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine have touched down in Bangkok's Suvarnabhumi airport, but whose arms will they be jabbed in? Public Health Minister Anutin Chanvirakul was at the airport to receive the long-awaited first lot of Pfizer vaccine doses purchased by the Thai government. In total, the government has ordered 30 million doses of the mRNA-based vaccine, with the other 28 million arriving before the end of the year. Yesterday's delivery will first need to undergo quality checks with the FDA and the Medical Sciences Department. Now, according to Anutin, the doses will then be distributed across the country, with most of them going to children between the ages of 12 and 18. The remainder will go to the general public. Administration of the doses is expected to get underway next week. In other news, China says it will donate another 1.5 million Sinovac doses to Thailand on top of the 1 million already donated. The last batch of the 500,000 donated Sinovac doses arrived in the kingdom in June. The government has also purchased between 6 and 7 million Sinovac doses and another 10 million AstraZeneca vaccines, where both will arrive next month. Anutin says that around 3 to 4 million people who had received 2 doses of Sinovac since March are now being given a booster dose. Thailand's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Don Paramatwinai, is in Washington, D.C. to discuss the mysterious 1 million Pfizer vaccines the U.S. donated that Thailand has yet to collect. The minister met with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and Senator Tammy Duckworth, who herself was born in Thailand and has been pushing to get the Pfizer vaccines for Thailand. So far, the U.S. has donated 2.5 million Pfizer vaccines, with 1.5 having been delivered 2 months ago and the remaining 1 million seemingly stalled in administrative paperwork. Last week, both sides argued that they were waiting on the other's bureaucratic red tape to complete the donation. The Thai government and the U.S. Embassy in Thailand denied claims that the holdup was on the Thai side, with Public Health Minister Anutin Chanvirakul saying they had not received paperwork through proper channels. However, Senator Duckworth argued that she already told Thai officials to file paperwork a month ago. Oh, this will be fun. The officials then agreed to meet next week to resolve the holdups and get the process back on track. The developers of Thailand's first mRNA-based COVID vaccine are urging the Thai FDA to approve it for emergency use during the booster rollout. According to a report, the government has allocated a budget of 1 billion baht to the developers in a bid to become self-reliant in vaccine manufacturing. The mRNA-based vaccine, called JulaCoV-19, is being developed at Chulalongkorn University under the leadership of Kiet Rakrungtham. He says the team is now concerned that by the time the development process is complete, at least 70% of the population will already be fully vaccinated. He's calling on the FDA to allow the JulaCoV-19 vaccine to be approved for emergency use in human trials alongside booster vaccines currently in use. The developer of another Thai vaccine that goes by the very uncatchy name of inactivated HXP-GPOVAC says normal FDA regulations risk causing further delay in bringing local vaccines to market. Both vaccines are in phase 2 of human trials, with a third tobacco-based vaccine from Bayer Phytopharm embarking on phase 1. Tourism officials in Indonesia are monitoring the Phuket sandbox as they consider gradually reopening Bali to foreign tourists. The country's tourism minister, Sandiaga Uno, says any reopening will have to proceed with caution. Indonesia was struck by a new wave of infections from June as the Delta variant gripped the country, with Bali being one of the first places ordered into lockdown. The island normally welcomes over 6 million foreign tourists, generating $10 billion a year. Today, hotels in once popular areas are shuttered, along with shops and other businesses that would normally serve tourists. Sandiaga has previously praised the Phuket sandbox concept, but said that if it were to be replicated on Bali, it will involve more restrictions. While sandbox tourists in Phuket can travel around the island freely, it's likely that on Bali, tourists will be confined to areas categorized as safe zones. Around 75% of Bali residents are now fully vaccinated, and the downward trend in new infections has already given a boost to domestic tourism, with around 6,000 daily visitors from places like Jakarta and Surabaya. Meanwhile, the manager of the island's Six Senses Resort is optimistic, saying occupancy this month has doubled at around 14%, and future bookings show signs of further improvement next month. The 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics is scheduled to take place between February the 4th and the 20th without any overseas fans present. The decision was announced by the International Olympic Committee yesterday, where attendance at the Games will be limited to people living in China. In terms of visiting participants, only those who are fully vaccinated will be exempt from 21 days of quarantine, although athletes who can justify not being vaccinated on medical grounds could also have the quarantine waived. On arrival, all athletes will be placed in a strict bubble environment that will cover all Olympics-related locations, including the stadium, athletes' accommodations, and catering venues. They will also have to submit to daily COVID-19 testing. Likewise, when the Tokyo 2020 Olympics took place, after being delayed by a year, fans were banned from nearly every venue. And that's all for the news today, but do check out the videos that just popped up to continue watching content from the Thaiger channel. Thailand News Today will be back tomorrow, Friday, with more headlines. Meanwhile, you're now up to date on the Thaiger.